With the advent of the war in Iraq, discussions about Quran burnings, and weekly news reports about dangerous cold uprisings across the globe, I began to question myself, what has happened to religion in our world? Whereas I first thought the problem arose out of the existence of religion itself, I found that there is a much more disturbing reason for much of the foreign and domestic conflicts that exist in America today. The problem of rampant religious illiteracy among the great majority of the American population. To explore the issue and to find an answer to my questions revolving around religion's role in our world today, I turned to Dr. Lynn S. Neal, a professor on religion at Wake Forest University, for her knowledge on the topic.
Well, I think we have to kind of tease out a couple of different concepts there. When I came to the topic of like religious intolerance, religious illiteracy, it was through the classroom. In fact, where I would teach instances in American history like the events of Waco and the Branch Davidians that were about religious conflict and religious violence, and my students wouldn't understand, wouldn't have a framework for seeing, wait, why? How did this happen? There isn't religious intolerance in America. They were just crazy people, those kinds of things. And when you start to see that pattern over and over again, you realize there's something going on. And so that made me think back in terms of American religious history, which is the field I'm trained in. You see recurring instances of religious intolerance. Despite our rhetoric of religious freedom and the First Amendment, we always want to say we're about diversity. And I think those things are true of our history, and they're ideals that we have as a nation. But what that story kind of hides or obscures in some ways is how there has been this other story, this kind of lesser motif or theme of groups that are different from the Protestant Christian norm being persecuted, marginalized, to such an extent that, there's been violent actions, political parties forming against particular religious movements, like the Know Nothing Party, which is an anti-Catholic political party. And so what I felt was important for understanding religious intolerance, the importance of religion in our world, is to provide people with a greater knowledge of religious intolerance throughout American history, to complicate that rhetoric of religious freedom and to show that there are historical roots to it and that there are recurring patterns and themes if you start to look at these events.
Dr. Lynn helped me to define religion and gave me a brief history of religious intolerance and illiteracy, but this only made me hunger for more. So I decided to interview some fellow Wake Forest classmates on what they felt about religion in today's world, beginning specifically with one event that nobody will ever forget, the attacks on 9/11.
It didn't change because it wasn't Muslims who attacked on 9/11. It was people who just happened to be Muslims. So it didn't change anything how I feel about them.
Well, when it happened, I was like 8, so I didn't really think about it. I didn't really know what was going on or what was happening. But now when I look back on it, it was just like I just realized the magnitude of what actually happened and how it affected the entire country as a whole. My personal views on Muslims have not changed. I know that it was a certain group of people that did it, and they happened to be of the Muslim faith. So it wouldn't be fair to generalize everyone under the same roof.
I'd like to think that I'm still not prejudiced against the entire Muslim culture, but I'm sure I still have my hesitations when it comes to Muslim people. But I am aware that it's a small radical section of the Muslim people that's responsible for that, so I should not be biased against the rest of the Muslim people. So.
I don't think so. I think a lot of people get stuck in their own religions and don't really know about other people's, and they aren't very accepting of other people's, probably because they're ignorant to what they believe in. So I think it would be helpful if more people knew about other religions before making lots of broad judgments about them.
I I think some of us are, but I think that a great majority of the country isn't. I think that a lot of us are willing to jump on the first thing they hear and not really even research what other religions believe. I don't think I don't think that as a whole we have a very good understanding on some things, on a lot of things actually, which is why there's still um, such a widespread use of stereotypes and racial slurs, and that's just one aspect of how American society is today.
I actually don't think that religious literacy is very good in America. I feel like too many people are not knowledgeable enough about the other world religions, and therefore come up with their own stereotypes and prejudices without actually knowing all the facts.
I found out that my classmates were right. Religious literacy was far from adequate. After reading further, I discovered that less than 8% of public school students in America had the option to study any analytical religious elective course. Meanwhile, 60% of Americans can't name 5 of the 10 commandments. Indeed, as one of the leading experts on the topic of religious literacy, Stephen Prothero, once put it, faith without understanding in America is standard, and where religious ignorance is bliss. So I had one final question for my classmates.
I think it's only okay if you're doing it from going over every religion and there isn't any type of bias from the teacher over which one the children should believe in, which is really hard to do. So if that can't be done, then I don't think there should be any type of religion talks in class.
That you can teach that you can teach religion in a public school. I think you should be. I think that it should be allowed to teach what each religion worships and how they worship. I don't think that in public schools though they should be kind of mandating or forcing a religion upon students. I think that would be more for a private school, and if they chose, like if the families chose to send their children to that. But the general knowledge of religion, I think, should be taught. If anything, I recommend that it should be taught just to bring about more understanding and more tolerance.
Okay, yeah, I don't think that religion has a place in a classroom if only one perspective or only one religion is being taught. But if it's a varied perspectives or multiple religions being taught, then I think that that's good. I think that people should be exposed to the different religions and different perspectives on those religions. However, I don't think it should be a singular perspective or singular religion that is taught in a classroom.
What do you think can be done to fix religious illiteracy in America?
Well, I think a couple of things. I think we need a stronger knowledge about our past as a nation, that if we can recognize the importance of religion in American history, but also the existence of religious intolerance throughout history, we'll be better prepared to deal with questions of religion and religious conflict. So I think that's one thing we can do. On a smaller level, perhaps, how do we achieve that goal? For me, one of the answers is to teach a class on religious intolerance. I also teach an intro to religion class, and part of the goals of those courses are to increase awareness and knowledge about different religions and how to interact with people who believe differently than yourself. And also, I have co-edited a book on the topic, given lectures on the topic. So basically, I'm saying education is one possible and hopefully transformative way to address the problem of religious illiteracy in the 21st century.
Religious illiteracy is not an incurable societal disease, but rather a challenge for ordinary citizens to educate themselves about the beliefs of others and take action in changing our government to allow for future generations to be better informed than ourselves.